George Topple, Union Township Trustee in Porter County.
Mitch Barloga, Active Transportation Manager, NERPC.
Kathy Luther, Chief of Staff at NERPC and Environmental Director of Joe.
Joe Axel, Senior Water Resource Planner at NERPC.
I'm Kevin Polite. I'm the sorry, I don't remember my role right now.
What he is today.
I collect a lot of data for NERPC.
Scott Weber, Transportation Planner and Analyst at NERPC.
Brian Blazak, Councilman in St. John.
David Wright, Planning and Marketing Manager for Gary Public Transportation Corporation.
I see Ashley.
As soon as I can figure out how to unmute myself, I'm Ashley Sharkey. I'm the Special Projects Coordinator with the DNR Lake Michigan Coastal Program.
Okay, welcome. And I see Kay Vallis.
Katie Vallis, Coastal Resources Planner with the DNR Lake Michigan Coastal Program until tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Meredith Stillwell, sorry, Meredith Stillwell, NERPC Office Manager.
Anyone else? Okay, if there is no one else to announce their presence, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the minutes. Has everyone taken a look at the minutes? We can do this without a motion to approve, but if someone wants to make a motion to do it, we can do it that way, because I know most of the committees do it that way.
This is David. I will go with tradition and move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, David. And Mr. Blazak, are you the other commissioner on board or the other member of the committee?
No, sir. Just a normal run-of-the-mill councilman.
Oh, well, that works for me. Okay, we have a motion. I'll second that then. And if there are any comments or objections, all in favor, I think we can do this voice vote because I think we can hear it. They're hearing no objections or corrections. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Moving along to the next item on the agenda. Sensible Tools Handbook update. Amen. Would you like to take that away for us and guide us through the progress?
Yes, let me share the screen here. Okay. Can everyone see the screen?
I can see it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So good morning, everyone. And again, we're getting close to wrap this Sensible Tools Handbook update. I have a team with me. I have Kathy, I have Mitch, I have Joe, and I have Scott. You know, like it's a huge project, you know, has so many elements and it needs a lot of expertise. And, you know, like without their help, you know, we will never finish this report. So in this one, I'm giving you an update. So it's getting close to release the final draft for everyone to review it. And I will start, as with the organization of the report itself. So the first chapter, we have the introduction, and in this one, we talk about the purpose of the handbook and the desired outcomes, which we discussed before, what we would like to see in this book, and also how to use the handbook. We have like a certain things as, like we have themes that it has to be reviewed. And also we're providing tools, and we provide references and best practices for every element that we discuss within the report. We also provide the principles of sensible growth from APA policy guide, from LARC and EPA, Lincoln Institute of Land Policy. All of this, it's a new principles that we did not presented in the old version of the Sensible Tools Handbook. So the new or the update of the handbook include like main themes, 5 themes that we have a committee, we are working committee, and it include planners and other people from Purdue University, land use. And we also have like a different a background, that help us to evaluate the work that we're doing. So the main themes that we came up with is first one, resilient. And under this one, we are discussing hazard mitigations, coastal hazards, and the green infrastructure or stormwater management. The second theme is healthy. And under that, actually, we have like a significant number of elements: the air quality, water quality, and healthy sanitations, green cities, transportation alternatives, aging population, school siting, safety, and sense of security, and transit. The third theme, sustainable, and under this one, we are providing urban forestry, wetland protection, community garden, affordable housing, energy, and brownfields. And then equitable, which we talk about environmental justice, universal design, transportation projects in low-income area or EJ area, and then park and recreation. So smart is the last one, which is also brand new. We talk about Internet of Things, smart mobility, connected and automated vehicles, micromobilities, and cell towers. So these are the main themes that the whole report is presenting for the update. Okay. So the first one is the hazard mitigations and coastal hazard, and also include the green infrastructure. And then Joe will go over these specific one to present it. Joe?
Okay. Yep. So just a brief, high-level overview. I'm thinking for a number of folks, but especially for me on this project, this definitely was kind of a learning opportunity of being able to take a deeper dive into some of these subject matters. And that was definitely the case for me on hazard mitigation, is finding, in large part, peer-reviewed information and resources that were available for local communities and the counties that could be implemented. And with the tools for hazard mitigation, as example, one of the things I looked at was the U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit, which has a subgrouping into a more refined area, looking at the Midwest region. So it had a number of resources that fell with underneath that communities could take that deeper dive if they wanted to, looking into this subject matter. There was the Hoosier Resilience Index, and also the National Risk Index. So hazard mitigation, not only looking at things like flooding, but this is also an opportunity where we brought in the coastal hazard and resilience information into it. Information within the tools could include policy recommendations, but also on many of the resources under this particular topic were meant to set up communities that they would be eligible for funding should a hazard impact their particular community. So making sure they're eligible for those funding dollars. Next slide. Green infrastructure, this is definitely more so in my wheelhouse, looking at natural ways of infiltrating and treating stormwater runoff, green infrastructure. Number of tools and resource manuals that I took a look at and to see what some of the highest reviewed ones were and had the most information that would be of value for the Midwest and our particular climate. Of course, there's the Indiana Stormwater Quality Manual hosted by Department of Environmental Management, but other really good resources included the Philadelphia Green Stormwater Infrastructure Planning and Design Manual, Low Impact Development Manual for Michigan, Great Lakes Green Streets Guidebook, and City of Indianapolis Department of Public Works Green Infrastructure Supplement document. This one was really stepped up in being that there was engineering specs in a number of these design tools, but there were also some modeling tools that communities might want to take a look at. And for this one, I made sure to highlight ones that you didn't necessarily have to go through special training on. Modeling tools can be very cumbersome for some of the more advanced ones, taking months of training. As I mentioned, these are kind of simpler models, and these include the National Stormwater Calculator and the Green Values Stormwater Management Calculator. This slide shows a couple of example images of green infrastructure. One on the top right is a local example that is a rain garden, a large rain garden. Almost would call it a bioretention facility constructed outside of Hobart City Hall. The other one, I'm not aware of any local examples yet here in Northwest Indiana, but this would be a infiltration and treatment structure that you would anticipate or would be appropriate for a downtown area in front of a business and along a sidewalk between the streets. So that last one being a planter box. Next slide. All right. Is this one mine, Iman?
Yeah, that was, like I came through this tool, which is Adaptation Tool, Adaptation Tool Kit for sea level rise and coastal land use. And that's specifically, like when you do a comprehensive planning, zoning and overlay zones, they offered, like what should you consider in every plan or every zoning or the floodplain regulations, building codes, setbacks, and buffers. So it's really a helpful tool for local government, like just, like for the sea level rise and coastal land use. So I'm showing examples. I know it has a lot of writing, but I'm showing, like how to use the tool and how that could help local government.
Yep. And a lot more information is going to be coming out on this over the next, honestly, few years. NERPC is collaborating with the DNR Lake Michigan Coastal Program on lake level rises and some of the policies and recommendations that could come out of it. Right now, a lot of study work going on to the severity and locations where our communities are being impacted by lake level rises. So, but still very good information, even on the sea level rise. A lot of that would still be appropriate here in our coastal region. Okay, next slide.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So the next slides, or the next theme is healthy. And we're talking about health and urban planning policies. So we're focusing on air quality, green cities, transportation alternatives, water quality, and healthy sanitation. So in this one, like the example here on the right, and I presented before, showing example of the built-up area. We have Atlanta's built-up area and Barcelona's. And in this one, we have like same almost number of population, 2.5 million in Atlanta, 2.8 million in Barcelona. So, but the urban area, in Barcelona, they are using only 162 square kilometer, and in Atlanta is 4,280. And it shows how does that impact the carbon emissions in every area. So, because they have like a compact development and a good public transportation system, which is really helping, with the air quality. So this is just an example showing, like sprawl and how does that impact the air quality. The next one, Kathy will talk about the air quality in the report. Kathy?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next slide. So the air quality section, we talked a little bit about why air quality is important, and particularly local impacts. So a lot of the air quality discussion in Northwest Indiana surrounds attainment of ozone standards. There's a lot of emphasis on, the permits of the mills, but there are air emissions that are really at the ground level that can have the biggest impact on health, and those are the local ones, particularly the particulates and other pollution from older diesel engines is typically one of the worst at the local level, close up. So most of the section focuses on things that local governments could do to reduce that the emissions from their own vehicles, school buses, transit buses, garbage trucks. It talks about using energy efficient city infrastructure buildings and alternative fuel stations, and incentivizing private investment through your local government purchasing and procurement. So like an example, if you're bidding out a construction project, you could include in the specs that they're they're using clean diesel engines or retrofitted diesel engines or something like that, or low emission vehicles for the construction that's going to happen right on your streets. Next slide, please.
Yeah, just highlighting the map on the right here, which is respiratory risk area in Indiana, and it's showing all the green area, and that's something that like to focus on specifically on this area and how to improve air quality specifically.
Mm-hmm. So and here then some of the tools that we highlighted was the International Energy Conservation Code that communities could adopt. I don't think the state of Indiana has adopted the 2018 codes, but community can do that. Roadway lighting, I know there's been a big push to switch roadway lighting over to LED in the region. That's a huge way. So kind of this is overlapping with the energy section, but they are closely linked because energy drives air emission. Energy use drives air emissions. The utility scale is more high level. The road traffic level is really local. So anyway, and then we have some other tools about ways to reduce auto emission and traffic congestion, which some of them will be explained in more detail in some of the other chapters. But reducing idling is a big thing, and I know that Indiana has some rules that schools need to have idle-free zones. In Southwest Ohio, the Cincinnati area, they have like a voluntary program just to put signs up and ask people not to idle. And they've had a lot of request for those type of signs in their at community facilities. So those are just examples of tools that communities could use, voluntary tools, tools in their building code, or tools in their to incentivize. Next slide, please. And we have a pretty, there's a really big push in our region for electric vehicle infrastructure and electric vehicle use. So Clean Cities actually help with this, providing some detailed tools for encouraging electric vehicle use in your community. Next slide.
Okay,
That
that's
is air.
Joe.
Now Joe has this.
Thank you, Kathy.
Still, after all this time, I'm having mute on while I go to talk. All right. On-site sewage disposal systems, AKA septic systems. So Indiana as a whole does pretty well with the first 4 elements: accurate information about soils on the site, proper design based on that soils information, construction following the design plans, and installation, good installation. But typically where we fall short as communities and counties is on the ongoing care and maintenance after installation. Next slide. And what that really gets at is a potential thing to look at. It would be implementing a county ordinance. And we've got a couple examples there at the bottom, Marshall County and St. Joseph County. There are others, but basically having the operating permits for those septic systems that require proper upkeep and maintenance, kind of closing that gap in there. And it really comes down to a public health concern, but also has water quality benefits associated with it. So, all right, next slide.
Thank you, Joe. That's me. So the next items here under healthy is green cities. And in this one, to determine any community if they really classified as a green cities, there are like 4 key dimensions. The first one is environment. So if a city has a low greenhouse gas emission per capita, or they have a high percentage of green space, good water quality, water consumption per capita is low, population density and light pollution level. So that's, will take them to classified as a green cities. The second dimension here is transportation. And in this one, specifically the low percentage of commuters who drive alone, high walk and bike scores, also the annual excess fuel consumption, high number of intersection density of street design. That's really important. I'm having a map to show that. High accessibility of jobs by public transit within 30 minutes. High number of alternative fuel stations per capita. The third dimension here is energy sources. They have significant share of electricity coming from renewable sources or solar. The installation per capita, and the number of smart energy policies and initiatives within the communities. And the last one is lifestyle and policy, and that's if they have a good number of farmer markets and also community supported agriculture programs, the number of certified organic farms per capita, community gardens, number of local programs promoting green energy use. That's also, all of these actually good dimensions to become a green city. So I looked at a study from webtop.com, and they evaluated that, and we actually have like 3 communities ranked within the top 100. Indianapolis ranked 36, Northwest Indiana within the Chicago MSA ranked 65, and Fort Wayne ranked 77 of the top 100.
Iman,
Yes.
Iman, I have concerns about the inclusion of that sidebar. I'm actually looking at the Wallet Hub ranking. I'm noticing that there isn't a mention of the different states and multi-state MSA. So I'm wondering if they even included the Chicago suburbs or Northwest Indiana in that ranking, because it didn't say Chicago and in parentheses, Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin.
They have the map, which is showing that. I don't have the map with me here now, but you have the link. You can check on that. That's, you know, like, no, they have like a Northwest Indiana within that.
Okay, I didn't see that. I'll take a look, but I just have my concerns about that sidebar. Okay,
you can take a look. Okay, thank you. The next slides here. So this is from EnviroAtlas Maps, which was very helpful to look at different things here when evaluate our area or the whole Indiana area. So they show the green space per capita in Northwest Indiana, and all the area of a light green shows that we are lacking green space in this area. And this like map will help the communities or these type of analysis, so they can identify, you know, what they need. They can work with Joe about the tree inventory project. And, you know, we can identify, you know, where should we put more green space or trees. Also, they have the pedestrian-oriented area, and that's based on the intersected street, and the dark brown showing the good intersected street, and that's help also with the pedestrian. And again, you know, like it shows area that is lacking good pedestrian-oriented streets, and that's help us, you know, like with any transit projects to look how to improve you know, like pedestrian connectivity within the area. The next one is under healthy transportation alternatives, and that's Mitch.
That would be me. All right. I think I got the next 4 slides actually. So thank you, Iman, and good morning, everybody. So getting into the transportation alternatives and healthy, obviously we have been very active regarding complete streets for many years now, and this is no different, including it here into the sensible tools. And now we have a living streets ordinance as well, or living streets policy. But getting into complete streets, you know, this talks about everything to help make the roadways accommodate all intended users. Of course, we have a problem in this country where it is a very auto-centric society. We need to kind of turn that around, especially in areas where there is high residential or high commercial density, and trying to get people to walk and bicycle more to their destinations, kind of use bicycling as and walking in a utilitarian fashion. And of course, that includes the usual elements such as multi-use trails, which are obviously proliferating. And then we have cycle tracks, bike lanes, shared routes, sidewalks, mid-block crossings. Those range in kind of a difficulty scale. And of course, down here on the lower right, you can see a graphic that shows how these are incorporated within the corridor. Cycle tracks being one of the more lesser known, but more up and coming elements, just was installed in the Miller neighborhood of Gary on Lake Street. So they're giving that a shot up there. Basically, it's just a multi-use trail within the road corridor. So it's separated from the actual roadway. And it's usually done with some type of curb or vertical element separating the uses. And it's a two-way lane. So those are helpful, and shared routes are extremely helpful too. I always tell people that many residential roads are like 30-foot wide bike paths because of such little vehicular traffic. And if we can just route people to those streets more often to kind of get around the busy corridors, could definitely help user comfort in the network. Okay, next slide, please.
I think that's me.
Oh, that'll be you. Okay, sorry, I jumped ahead. I'm getting greedy, man, sorry.
Yeah, we also discussed the aging population, and you see here on the right, the table showing, like that by 2050, we have the percentage of 65 and up will increase by almost 57%, and the elderly 80 and up will increase by 121 percentage percent, and that's give us a good indication on how really to take care of Asian population and to plan for them and make their life easier. And we see here, like all the counties, the top counties in Indiana, that they have a significant increase in aging or senior citizens. And Hamilton County is #1, Hendricks County. We are Porter County here coming on the middle, which we have 47%. We don't have within Northwest Indiana any other top county except for Porter County. But that's like a significant increase, which we should be ready for. So here also we provide some guidelines here for to have like safe routes for seniors. I don't have to read all of that, but just I'm showing that we are providing planning tools that help local government when they plan for aging population. School siting, that's back again to Mitch.
Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you, Iman. School siting is something that is unfortunately not only here but around the country overlooked as an issue with advancing a non-motorized culture in a particular community or region. And what we have tried to incorporate here is obviously a big land use consideration is the location of our schools that are placed within the dense residential areas or as close as possible to them. We have seen several communities, which will remain nameless, that have placed middle schools, high schools, and maybe in some cases elementary schools far from the actual residential grid. It's usually a phenomenon with the middle and high schools where it's practically impossible for students to walk or bike there. Because first of all, there's no facilities to access them and the distance involved in accessing the facilities. So we want to make sure that we can incorporate sound school siting policy within a land use framework for a particular community. We talk about how that works here on this chart to the right of the screen. This is a great chart that talks about the planning process involved, who should be involved in it, and the stakeholders and the input that is necessary to make this happen. Sometimes it's a very low-hanging fruit issue where once I used to live in Crown Point, and they did a great job with the rebuilding of a middle school right on the old high school property, right in the downtown area, so that retained that, I say, energy. It also gave students such as my own son the ability to walk and bike to school on a daily basis. And we talk about ways, strategies, trying to get children to walk and bike more. Walking school buses emphasized within this study. It's really a very highly effective and very popular program, and it's exactly how it sounds. Just working with some interested parents, gathering together, walking to school together. It's very fun for the students. It's a social opportunity for them to maybe kind of get some energy out of their system before they have to sit down and focus on their studies. But it gives them an opportunity to walk and bike in this case, walking with other children, fellow students, and the parents have an opportunity to socialize with other parents as well. And again, it just kind of, it builds community and obviously healthy lifestyles. So we want to make sure that that is emphasized within this report. Next. And then Safer House to School. We emphasize here the tools behind creating Safer House to School policies. We want to establish lifelong healthy habits at the earliest stages possible in a child's development. And that is, unfortunately, I grew up in a kind of a sprawling area. And of course, I didn't have the opportunity to walk and bike to school. It just wasn't feasible. But we want to make sure that, especially where there are opportunities, that we can work with schools and give them the tools necessary to get children to access these facilities. These are several of them. They're like the 6 E's, as you see here: engagement, equity, engineering, encouragement, education, evaluation. And those are all identified here and spelled out. We talk about traffic calming as well. And so traffic calming does go hand in hand with safe routes, in the sense that when a safe routes program is initiated and the children are walking into school, many times they're going to identify hazards along the way and bring those to the attention of either the school district or mostly within the municipal jurisdiction to have them work on making those safer. Usually it's just repairing and connecting sidewalks is the big culprit. But another big thing is traffic calming. And this, of course, applies across the entire spectrum of non-motorized uses. Our traffic speeds are just woefully high, even on residential roads. People just scream by on a constant basis. And I've showed a slide in my previous presentations about a human being hit at either 20 or 30 miles an hour, and then actually 30 to 40 miles an hour. And the difference of either surviving that or becoming a fatality is quite pronounced. And so speed limits are very important to abide by, but unfortunately, the way our roads are designed, people are given the impression psychologically that they can just race through these areas. So we have to, as they say, create friction within these neighborhoods, especially these residential neighborhoods where people need to slow down. We need to kind of get different infrastructure elements into the street. You see the pictures off to the very right, that the top one being bulb outs at intersections. That is kind of a dual purpose where you're slowing traffic down, and then the traffic can actually see the pedestrians because they're standing into the street corridor more. So there's a visibility issue there too. And then of course, chicanes are in the picture below that. Again, getting friction, yes, parked cars are helpful too, actually, but having these planting areas and these curbs actually bump out into the street, it's going to slow you down. Of course, speed humps are becoming popular. And then just providing the infrastructure throughout the entire network that does help raise security. That's bike lockers at the very bottom. So if people are going to you're trying to encourage people to access commercial facilities, transit facilities more often, you have to make sure that their $2,000-3,000 bicycle is secure for the entire day while they go off to work or what have you. So security, safety, a major concern, and there's quite a few tools at the discretion of communities to work with on that matter. Next slide.
Okay, thank you much.
You bet.
The next one is the item under healthy is transit, and basically we're focusing on the transit-oriented development, or TOD, and the benefit of the TOD, how they lower the household transportation costs. They also boost public transit ridership and reduce greenhouse gas emission, of course, and improve air quality. And also they spur economic development and make housing more affordable within this area. But there is like some requirements for a TOD. For example, the TOD, the good design will have a good accessibility, consider all modes of transportation, universal design, and of course will have like a visual accessibility. We would like to be able to see where is the station visually. They also, for the road design, we need a good street connectivity, dedicated lanes and road diets, as Mitch mentioned, like how there are certain tools, like to encourage TOD, encourage people to bike and to walk to transit stations. Also parking management, and the picture here on the right, showing the two type of how to do with the TOD, the bottom one showing, like to have on-street parking, you have to utilize some open space around the stations, and that's the good design that encourage people. The top one showing it's just a huge surface parking. So for parking management, the large expenses of surface parking and standalone parking discourage walking, as we mentioned, and make driving the only viable transportation. Also, to better manage parking, we have to have mixed use district that encourage walking and also reduce the cost of redevelopment and the infill projects. We provide, like some 8 principles here for TOD to walk, cycle, connect, transit, mix, densify, compact, and shift. That's, like the 8 principle for any TOD planning. And we also provide like some tools within the handbook that help community that working, especially with the model ordinance for a TOD and how they should develop that. So that's will be all provided on appendix by the end of the report because it's too much writing and we can have all of that within the actual narrative. The next one here is transit safety and security. That's when also they have to plan the top picture here showing somebody on the bike and, with no protection coming from the transit vehicle here. And that's some consideration we should have it like for safety of these people around transit area. A transit agency, and maybe David can jump on that, they can gather like useful information about pedestrian access to transit to improve the safety. If they observe pedestrian using informal pathways where sidewalk do not exist, that's important. Pedestrian competing for seating or shelter space at bus stop, pedestrian crossing roadways at mid-block location, pedestrian running across roadway to catch the bus, which is happening a lot, motorist behaviors near the stop or station, like speeding or not yielding for pedestrian and crosswalk. So that's the examples on the right showing a good practice of mid-block crossing to a bus stop. It's as you see here, like it's just the car has to stop for pedestrian, and that's mid-block, not intersection. So that's a good practice that could help transit agencies and communities to plan for safety of transit riders. David, do you want to add anything that you experience with that?
Yes, we actually do work to make sure that we minimize traffic and pedestrian conflicts when we situate our bus stops. We did a lot of that when it came to work on the Broadway corridor and doing the same thing for Grant Street. Our information gathering is limited to incidents that are directly involving our system. So we may not catch all of the incidents that take place near a transit stop. So it probably is incumbent on transit and planning professionals to not just use transit data, but data for safety incidents and accidents near transit stops to actually capture all of the activity and potential conflicts that take place in those areas.
Okay, thank
and
you.
probably for all modes as well, not just fixed route transit, but for commuter rail as well.
Yes, thank you.
Eman, if I could add one more thing on the on the bottom left figure, the federal highway, that's a great example right there of kind of the cross-pollination of these different topical areas. That's a nice living streets design right there, because I mean, I'm looking at that and just the use of vegetation, but also going beyond just, you know, planting an area. I can tell from that design with the curb cuts that they're also treating stormwater with that particular design right there. So a nice cross-pollination across these topical areas.
Okay, thank you. The next theme here is sustainable, and we have like a number of elements here, and I think Joe can start with that.
Yep. Urban forestry. This is definitely one of my favorites for anybody that's familiar with the work that NERPC has been doing lately, and some of the work that I've been helping with is on urban forestry. One of our big pushes and stepping stones to help ease communities into this is to achieve the Tree City USA designation. A lot of our communities are really good about tree planting, but like with any other infrastructures, there's other investments that have to be made to make sure that, you know, the effort and the dollars that you put into those tree plantings make sure that we're getting and maximizing the benefits out of our urban forests. So the Tree City USA designation, you know, having that tree board in place, having a tree care ordinance, the minimum per capita on a community forestry program, and having the Arbor Day proclamation, which was just like last month. So some of the tree tools, you can go into a deeper dive with any of these. That's kind of the hopes with a lot of these, is kind of providing some hot button topics that people can go off and explore. Center for Watershed Protection has a lot of really detailed ordinance review and plan review to see how well communities incorporate urban forestry into municipal operations. We've got a couple of example tree preservation ordinances at different scales, from kind of like a silver star all the way up to kind of like a diamond level. But we also have other resources that are out there, for instance, from the Chicago Region Trees Initiative, and also from the Indiana Department of Natural Resources Urban Forestry Planning. Wetland protection. This is an interesting one, and one that has taken, unfortunately, a hit here in the past couple of weeks in the state of Indiana. For many of those that have been kind of following along with it, a lot of the protections for isolated wetlands were stripped away here in the past couple of weeks. So we highlight still the benefits of wetland protection. A big one that most communities and individuals are going to understand is the flood attenuation and stormwater management. Surface and groundwater protection. Not everybody is lucky enough to live next to a Lake Michigan for their for a water resource. They also have the erosion control, fish and wildlife habitats. But then we go into some of the wetland regulations that can be adopted by communities, you know, special protection ordinances, zoning regulations, and the like. Next slide. Farmland preservation. As a whole, this is something Indiana is struggling with. The center figure with that grid is how is the state doing. That is how Indiana is doing with this nationwide analysis. Is basically we have a high threat level for conversion to other uses, primarily developed lands. And we have very few policies in place to kind of reverse that trend. Within this section, we have a number of policy tools and recommendations that communities and counties can take a look at. For example, one of the things that can be done is conservation easements on agricultural lands to make sure that when that farmer is done and there's nobody else left, for example, within the family that wants to take it up, that organizations can come in, purchase the land, then lease it out to other farmers that are interested in keeping that land in production. Also provide a link. It's basically a one-stop shop for a nationwide organization, the American Farmland Trust, that provides a whole bunch of resources on farmland preservation. So, Kathy, do you want to hit the water conservation? Okay, we'll go ahead and take that one. As with a lot of these topical areas, we talk about why we should be considering water conservation, even outside of, for those outside of Lake Michigan Basin. And we talk about usage by different community sectors within there, whether it's, you know, like home use or even within the industrial section. But then we really hit upon the individual policies and actions that communities and counties can take up to for water conservation efforts.
Sorry,
Okay.
I did start talking, but I forgot I was muted. Sorry.
Been there, done that.
Thank you.
Want to add to that, Kathy?
No, that's pretty good. Thank you. You did a good job.
Okay, the next one in sustainable, we also thought that urban agriculture or urban farming is very important and wasn't discussed in the first book. Again, this like Sensible Tools Handbook update is different than the first one, because in the first one, we just have the tools for comprehensive planning, zoning amendments, subdivision plat, site plan review, which help the commissioners to go through the questions before approving or reviewing any like application coming for any development. In this one, we discuss the new stuff that came lately in the last 10 years that wasn't highlighted, but it's really good tools that the community should work with now and consider it, because it's growing and it's getting very important to consider it. So the urban agriculture here, we have a lot of benefits of urban agriculture. City of Indianapolis has a significant number of urban and community gardens, about 134, and they have 20 urban farms, which they are doing really good. And I checked their examples and what they do to just promote urban agriculture within the area. So we have like providing some tools here to support urban agriculture through like zoning codes, like reduce restriction on agriculture use in residential area and provide guidance on the right use to increase resident accessibility to healthy food. Also create a mixed use land pattern that look for healthy food production in all zones, different zones within the region. Also transfer vacant lots into community parks and gardens. And I know the city of Gary doing this effort. The picture here on the right, that's one of the urban farm on the city of Gary, and the one on the left, it's one of the Indianapolis urban farm. Also here, we have like an urban agriculture audit tools And in this one, the community could use that, and they talk about equity, permissible land use, land access, and economic. These tools that should be reviewed for any urban agriculture work. So that's basically all we put with, and we have, of course, additional tools, but I can't present everything within the PowerPoint. The next one here under sustainable is affordable housing. And this one will provide, housing tools that help it to increase the affordable housing within our region. The map here, the circle one, is showing the local housing affordability tools by the state and showing if they have inclusionary housing, rent control, vouchers as a source of income, city housing, trust fund, state tax incentives. And as I looked in Indiana, which with the red arrow here, the only thing we have as a tools for affordable housing is city housing trust funds. So the state of Indiana in general need to work to improve housing affordability within the region, and adding the other tools like the other states. As we see, some states, they have all the tools within their states. Also, the map here showing on the right, we have a chart showing the congressional district, area affordability, housing and transportation cost. And then this one showing Northwest Indiana here, they have like a reasonable housing and transportation cost, but the lowest here we have a District 7, which is south of Indy, but the highest one we have here is District 5, which around Indianapolis. Indianapolis, yeah, maybe in some suburb here. The cost of living by county, that also was provided by bestplaces.net, and showing here all the green one is lower than average, and then we have the purple one, which is higher than average, and it shows Porter County, one of the highest here, cost of living within the area in comparison to Lake and LaPorte counties. So I will provide some other tools, kit here for housing, and when you read the report, you will see the other tools. The next one here is energy, and that's basically we talk about the energy tools, how to save, the electricity if you're using the wind power or using solar. And we have a lot of tools here. The map on the right showing the 100-mile wind speed, which is all the purple area is a good area for wind power. The orange and red or yellow here, this is not as good for wind power. We are providing energy tools, and we also have the wind energy development process and 7 Ps here. They talk about the potential, promotion, public outreach, planning, permitting, project construction, and project operations. So this is like a brief overview of energy and how people should do to have like this type of renewable energy. Also the solar and Kathy, you can talk about that because I know that you were involved in this solar project.
Yeah, so on the, I'm looking at the presentation, not your presentation. We pulled a lot of most of these tools from the solar project we did a couple years ago. The solar ready construction checklist is one that's for new construction. And there was also tools for solar ready zoning and solar ready like solar by right type of ordinances. So I think all the different tools that we had done during that project are included in the full chapter. And I think that's pretty much, so this was sort of
Yeah,
a recycled project, but there's a lot of, and there's tools about what can, these are basically the project that we did was surrounding more like removing barriers. Although in our region, the electricity cost is so low that it's hard for solar. Solar has a much longer payback period than in other parts of the country, but it still pays for itself in about 10 years, solar. Residential. So the more we can reduce barriers, then the more cost effective it becomes.
Thank you. The next one is yours also, the brownfield redevelopment.
This is a list of brownfield incentive programs, but we also have in there, I think, some things that cities and towns can do to reduce brownfield, protect themselves from liability for brownfields, and protect their eligibility for properties they acquire for federal funds, and just kind of some readiness tools that we took from the Kansas City Technical Assistance to Brownfield Program has a local government capacity assessment tool survey, which, by the way, we've sent out to our local governments and hope that some of them will do the survey. So we pulled some different things from there, like, do you have somebody in your community that understands brownfields or is kind of the lead person? Just as a capacity tool. So that's mostly an example. And then there's also incentives communities can offer for redeveloping brownfields in their community.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. The next theme we have here is equitable, and we focusing on environmental justice, universal design, park and recreation. This is like how to be equitable, like to an EJ area. So for the environmental justice, like from the sensible tools perspective, the goals is to minimizing pollution and health risk, and encouraging investment in economic growth, the brownfield cleanup, of course, within this area, greening, community greening, including park development and urban forestry, enhancing public participation and outreach. So these are the main goals for EJ area from the sensible tools perspective. So we also providing some planning tools. One of them is the Green Infrastructure Toolkit, and here how to invest in parks, how to increase trees and plant trees within this area, building new parks, like in underutilized area or vacant lots within an EJ area. Universal design, and that's Mitch can talk more about that and what they do with the universal design.
Yes, I can. So universal design are standards that go above and beyond the basic ADA, American with Disabilities Act standards that we're all familiar with at this point. And they get into a series of 7 main elements and focus areas that help people in the built infrastructure understand the needs of people with disabilities and how they can maximize accessibility for this population as much as possible. They're using these 7 principles here. These are identified as kind of universal principles when looking towards universal design standards, and we want to make sure that they are incorporated within this document and that people will incorporate them within their municipal building codes, and as well as when they are going around reconfiguring, reconstructing, revitalizing streetscapes within their communities. Next slide.
Yes,
I can speak to this too with transportation projects. I mentioned this earlier. Automobile use is prevalent. In fact, I think about 90% of all of us use a car to get around, which is far and away the most in the entire world. And so, unfortunately, and of course, with the interstate system pretty much fortifying that culture, it has gotten into an epidemic. We have this obesity crisis in our country and so forth. We have clean air issues. Automobiles are the leading cause of non-attainment areas in this country, although people will point to manufacturing too, but automobiles are the culprit. So again, we need to work on getting down to making sure people have comfortable areas for them to walk and bike. And, we want to make sure too that communities that are disadvantaged, low income, minority, and what have you, also are afforded those benefits as well throughout this region. And we want to make sure that we talk about Vision Zero in the midst of our dialogue. That's presented to you to the right of the slide. Vision Zero is something that we'll probably be rolling out in more detail as we go along here, but it is a goal to prevent, to the greatest degree possible, pedestrian and bicycle fatalities within our roadway corridors. It talks about different approaches to it, where, just the first one talking about, in traditional, traffic deaths are inevitable. No, traffic deaths are preventable. Again, it just comes down to a mindset of making sure that pedestrians are going to be accommodated as safely as possible, especially, and of course, that comes right down to when street corridors are, reconfigured, rethought, and even built from the ground up. We do have some projects in our region that do include new street corridors, and we want to make sure that within those corridors, these elements are incorporated, again, to the greatest degree possible. So next slide.
Again, under equitable, we talked about the park and recreational, and the map here on the left showing the EJ areas trees coverage, which is the dark area or the darker green showing the lack of tree coverage. And again, this is like to be equitable, we need to increase the green space within this area. We also showing approaches to bridging park equity, which can help the communities. So we have different models here, and who the identified potential champions, the placemaking consideration for every models, and then showing examples. So that's, communities could use this type of tools to improve accessibility to park and recreational within an EJ area. Okay, so the next one is smart. So in this theme, we talk about smart cities and how to bring infrastructure, technology to improve the quality of life. And that's something completely new. We did not discuss it on the old version of the Sensible Tools Handbook because of the technology and the fast pace of changing in technology. So we, in this theme, we talk about Internet of Things, smart mobility, connected and automated vehicles, micro mobility, and cell towers. I'm not covering everything here, but Scott maybe can give us an overview about some of the stuff here.
Yes, sure. So if you go to the next slide, so the 5 tools in the toolbox when it comes to smart that Iman just mentioned on the previous slide, I'll go through some of them briefly. So the Internet of Things is this concept that a lot of us are familiar with. It's this idea that technology automatically transmits a lot of passive data that's used in a lot of contexts, and it behooves governments to be able to use all of this flow of information in a more useful way. So for example, we're familiar with like when you walk down the street and you see these ads pop up on your phone because of your location, for example, or just because of what you've been browsing on the online. So this is just kind of using the Internet of Things in the economic context. A lot of us might have smart thermostats at home that'll automatically adjust the temperature. So it's these kinds of things. You see parking signs sometimes in cities where that'll show how many spaces are available. So there's ways to use this flow of information in ways that can help the customer. So for example, this diagram just shows a conceptual diagram in the middle of all these flows of information in the transportation context. And I really like the diagram on the right because it shows, this is the Strava global heat map of Indiana. It's using fitness wearable devices transmitted to show where people are actually using non-motorized transportation and active transportation modes. And it really highlights all of the, not only the trails, but some of the road facilities that are friendly to these types of activities. And so that kind of shows communities where they can really make an impact in investing in improving those areas, as well as some of the areas that aren't lit up that they would like to be lit up in terms of how they might prioritize their investments. So if you go to the next slide. So another area in the smart is smart mobility. And I wanted to call out in particular the Indianapolis Smart Corridors Plan, because it was a plan in Indiana launched in response to the US DOT had a call out for smart city projects back in 2016. And Indianapolis applied with this plan called the Indianapolis Smart Corridors Plan that kind of utilized 4 elements: commercial integration of autonomous connected vehicle technology, ITS, which is the Intelligent Transportation Systems Architecture, and real-time data integration, user portal, mobile application, and live modeling, traffic modeling, and dynamic trip pricing as kind of the 4 cornerstone elements of this plan. So it goes to show that there really is already momentum toward smart mobility in Indiana, even though this particular application was unsuccessful in securing the US DOT funding back in 2016. It showed that there were a lot of efforts and stakeholders coming together around this concept. In the upper right, you can see an example at the Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, or IUPUI, the TASI AV Testing Institute. They have an institute there at IUPUI showing basically autonomous vehicle safety. They put a bicyclist in front of this autonomous car, and they're testing the pre-collision avoidance system. So there's a lot of university and academia momentum as well in research toward understanding autonomous vehicles in Indiana. And just briefly, some of the concepts around what connected and automated vehicles are. Well, the V2V, just the flows of information that these vehicles are able to kind of interact with other vehicles on the road and receive diagnostic information. For example, if a vehicle in front of a vehicle has a brake failure, that vehicle can be alerted to that right away without having to kind of detect that. Vehicles infrastructure is where you have vehicles interacting with nodes in the environment around the vehicle. And then vehicle to everything is allowing vehicles to interact with any devices out there, not just other vehicles or other infrastructure. For example, if a pedestrian enters a crosswalk, that pedestrian's cell phone can instantly transmit information that the vehicle can detect that pedestrian is there, so it better take aversive action in order to avoid the collision. So there are examples of utilizing this technology in productive ways. So if you go to the next slide.
It's actually, thank you, Scott. I know that like we still have the micro mobility and we have cell towers, which Bitch is here also. He can briefly talk about the micro mobility in this section. We also discuss, we offer some ordinance, for cell towers as was requested. To include that within the handbook, and it's already within the report. I know it's a matter of time. We've been over an hour. I know, but it's a huge report. It has all the elements of planning and transportation and environment. But I think like whenever, like if you think that there is a need for certain planning activities, just to check the section you want and all the tools that could help you with that. So Mitch, can you quickly talk about micromobility?
Yeah, micromobility is something that is coming online, and it's trying to find a foothold in this transportation network. And micromobility in the sense of bicycle and pedestrian, but in many cases, these elements that include electric bikes, electric scooters, and you're seeing them proliferate through our urban areas. I think some people have either used a Lime scooter or tripped over a Lime scooter that has been placed erroneously within a sidewalk corridor. But these are growing rapidly, and again, it kind of started out years ago with the shared bicycle system, and those are still popular in the heavy metro areas such as the Chicago Ditty system, but they don't work as well in the suburban systems as we have found out here in our region. So these vendors are still figuring out a way of having them incorporate within these areas, especially dealing with the electric bike phenomenon as well. And we're going to see probably an increase in the use of electric bicycles over time because of their convenience and also the cost savings and also the health benefits they provide for people. So scooters are a little rougher to use for long distances, but electric bicycles are quite comfortable for that reason. And so, just a current challenge of that is how do we enforce those on our trails and on our systems that are supposed to be quote unquote non-motorized. Where do electric bicycles fit in? Speed limits will probably have to be established and enforced within these corridors. The Indiana law does give local entities the latitude to enforce this, but usually that is done, make sure that the engines don't go or the electric motors don't go as high as 20 miles an hour and on and on and on. There is best practices. We hope to incorporate that within this document to give people templates to work off of and incorporate in their own communities.
Thank you, Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions? It's overwhelming, I know.
Does that conclude the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, very good. It was very well done, very informative. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or from anyone? Hearing none, we'll move on to community updates.
I think we have the legislative update.
Oh, I'm sorry. My pen was over that. It slipped down. Legislative updates. Who's taking that?
Yeah, we usually do that in every meeting. If we have some legislative update, we try to do that and let people, because it's basically helping local communities to know what's happening. Kathy's leaving, I think. She's sending a message here. So I'm gonna share a screen again. And I think you received that already. Have you received the email?
I received it.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll have to go back through my emails.
Okay, but do you see the screen?
I see the screen, yes.
Okay. Okay, so in this one, basically we go over what's happening in Indiana, and I'm having some update here, House Bill 1025, and talk about the enterprise zone renewals. And in this one, they provide that an enterprise zone may be renewed for an additional 5 years if the municipalities that has an enterprise zone is located, adopts a resolution to renew the enterprise zone. So in this one, provide that a zone business located in the renewed enterprise zone may access the property taxes deduction incentives. And this one, it's already approved. The next one is talking House Bill 1090. And in this one, it's about alcohol matters, and that's removed the requirements of that oil refinery be located within a municipal lakefront development project. And the second, a municipal lakefront development project must be funded in part with local, state, and federal money. Requires also the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission to provide notice to the city or town council and the mayor office of the city which municipal lakefront development is located. So they require the commission to post signs indicating when and where certain hearings will take place. So that's another one regarding lakefront development. The next one here is broadband development. And this is require the OCRA office to establish a process to be used before each formal submission of the application grant of rural broadband fund. And they have like a certain thing they are asking for. I don't have to go over that, but that's specifically for broadband. It's and this one already signed by the president. The next one is the broadband projects again, and that requires the Indiana Department of Transportation to create a broadband corridor program, which is great, you know, like for NDOT to start this type of program, and to manage the location, installation, and maintenance of the communications infrastructure. And this one, the current status was as April 20. The Senate concurred in House amendment in this one. So the next one is local utility and energy matters. And in this one, they prohibit a local government from banning a particular fuel source, natural gas. The bill also bans local units of government from requiring a particular component design or type of material be used in the construction of the building. Which is, I think this is a very good also bill here. The next one is talking about eliminating protection for Class 1 wetlands and significantly reduce protection for Class 2. Class 1 includes over 50% of the remaining state protected wetland, and Class 2 include about 40%. So in this one, 389 will leave most wetlands in jeopardy. Home builders, developers, and farmers supported the bill because they view the state regulations of wetland as a burden. So I don't know if this is like a good practice of wetland. Joe, you can jump on that, and you know, like, what do you think?
It's bad. Overall, it's bad. I mean, I understand the need for development and farming and so forth, but as a whole and long term, it's a definite loss. Even so, Indiana has like 3 different classification of wetlands, one being the lowest class. You know, they've been altered, you know, they're not used by endangered or threatened rare. Class 2 is a little bit higher quality, but is still a bit impacted by people. Class 3 are our highest quality. Those luckily are left in place. So our dune and swale still has its protections in place. But regardless, each type of class of wetland provides an environmental benefit to people. So as a whole, I mean, imagine losing 50% of like our remaining wetlands, they're filled. Well, that's 50% less storage for our the landscape. So, you know, in theory, we could be seeing increases in flooding activity, especially at a time when rainfall intensities and the like are increasing. So overall, it's a loss, but I mean, there's some positives for some very specific audience members with the passage of this one. Is what it is, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, and we're losing farmland, losing wetlands.
Yeah.
But I know that like the Indiana Planning Association, they are against that, and they already sent a letter regarding this bill. The last one here is specifically about LEED certification of public buildings. And here a representative from Munster require the Office of Management and Budget to perform a cost benefit analysis to determine the potential overall savings. And here they are required for public building constructed after December 31st, which is next year, starting January 22, to attain at least a silver LEED certification. And I think this is a good bill, and that's what we be looking for, to have like mostly have like a safe building, specifically the public buildings. So that's conclude, you know, like the my overview here of all the legislative update happening lately within the state of India.
Iman,
Yes.
going back to House Bill 1191, which I believe passed, that bill essentially forbids local governments from regulating themselves, not just with fuel sources, but also something that has come up frequently in the past, the whole regulation of types of building materials. Essentially, it actively does what a couple of anti-transit people have been doing in Indianapolis in the last couple of legislative sessions, and that is Indianapolis, particularly the State House, taking over a local matter to stop them from home rule when it comes to regulating things that they should be regulating. In this particular instance, it is building materials and fuel. In the instance of a bill that was stopped in Indianapolis a couple of weeks ago, it would have basically punished Indigo for implementing a a plan that was approved by the majority of voters, the Indy Moves program. So even though that anti-transit bill didn't pass, or an amendment that was attached to another bill didn't pass, when it comes to local ownership of sustainability issues, it wasn't a great session. When you include HB 1191 and the wetlands bill. Yeah, it was kind of a step back in Indiana being on the cutting edge and trying to improve its environment. So there's some wounds to be licked when it comes to how we tout this state as being relatively progressive.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Okay. So next item. So George?
You're muted, George.
Oh, okay.
There, I thought I pushed the button before. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Is there anyone else that has any updates besides me? Community updates?
I'll mention real quick that GPTC is working with a couple of active transportation, active living organizations to sponsor a series of hikes that promote the connection between open space and transit. We calling it the Transit to Trails initiative. The first hike is in the Miller Woods on May 29th. There's another hike in Brunswick Park on June 26th. And on July 17th, we are going to be sponsoring what we call an urban hike in downtown Gary that will focus on locations that are of artistic and historic preservation significance. There's information on our Facebook page, Gary Transit, information also on our Twitter feed. And we'll be putting more information out as it goes, but it's our attempt to highlight how transit is accessible to open areas and bike trails in the area.
That's huge. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll certainly update that on Greenways, Blueways. Thanks, Dave.
All right, I'd appreciate that. No problem.
Okay, thank you, David. Anyone else for any community updates? If not, I will just mention the fact that in 1836, on April 30th, Union Township came to be. And so we're celebrating, and on April 23rd, we got a brand new fire truck. Some of the things that we talked about here kind of seem like it could be a wonderful plan to fill the Union gap in a responsible way as we grow. We grew from last census over 9%. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we didn't grow another 1 or 2% in the last 6 months. I hope that a lot of these ideas can be integrated as the other areas of our 3 counties grow, because I think even though some of the places are unincorporated, I think we need to plan for those as well, because those are the links to the future. That's all I have. Anyone else with comments or community updates? The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 5th, 2021, 10 o'clock a.m. And that may be in person. I don't know.
Hopefully.
Any word on that yet, Iman?
No, we don't know yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I never thought it would last this long.
Yeah, I know. We've been over a year.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. Great meeting, lots of good information. And if there are no further questions or comments, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Everybody have a great evening.
Take care,
Okay.
guys.
God bless you. Bye-bye.